The Lucifer Effect by Dr. Philip Zimbardo. The Lucifer Effect was the first book that came to me. It spoke to me in the time that I had the first hit at the rock bottom. Well, actually, technically, I had stayed at the rock bottom for quite some time before I finally allowed myself to speak to this book. I had been part of a group. And I'm being quite gracious here by calling it a group. It actually bordered on a cult. After 8 years of being in this group, my threshold had been reached when I had finally started to see the immoral activities going on in this. Having had the first-hand experience of it myself, I decided it is now time to quit it. And by the way, when I say immoral, please let your imagination run as wild as you can. This group had been at the foundation of my entire social structure, my family, my work, and my marriage. To quit it meant to challenge all of these institutions, and so I did. I committed the social suicide. I did the whistleblowing part. I left the group. I left my job. I left my city, and also my family. My marriage survived, and thank God it did, because I had married my best friend. He believed in you jump, I jump. So here I was, jobless, sort of orphaned, sitting alone in my apartment and questioning everything. My religion, my values, my ethics. In the midst of all of this chaos, when I had so many things to worry about, so many things to mourn over, the only question that was running in my mind day in and day out was, how did I fall for all of this? How did I not see it sooner? And it is quite understandable because my ego had taken a huge hit. 15 years of education in medicine, at the peak of my career, and I was still blindsided. So I started doing the usual ritual you follow when you have a midlife crisis. You meditate, you travel, you talk to friends, you take therapy. By any which way, you just keep making that attempt to find the right answer to the questions that are coming to your mind. You try to find the meaning from deep within. But no, it didn't come. It didn't come. And then one day, just like how the apple had fallen on Newton's head, this book fell into my lap. Well, not quite literally. It was actually the end result of an extensive search by a deeply troubled, exhausted, and bored mind of trying to read something meaningful, something that would help me understand the distinction between right and wrong, good and evil. The Lucifer Effect came like an angel with its guiding light. It was 590 pages of therapy. It spoke to me, and boy, did it answer all of my questions. If you have ever been curious or just wanting to know what makes evil, what it means to be in a cult, how are tyrants born, and the million-dollar question, in the event of a crime, who would you blame? Would you blame the person or would you blame the situation? If you are someone who thinks that rather than taking the easy way out and being judgmental about a criminal, you would like to give them a benefit of doubt, then you have picked the right book. This book will speak to you in ways that will change your outlook towards deviancy and its aftermath. I devoured the book. It was quite an extensive read, so I have distilled out the extract. I'll be presenting it to you in the remaining podcast, but I sincerely hope you're able to hear and reciprocate to the whispers of this masterpiece. This book will change your outlook towards the good and evil in each person, of the capability of us all to be either an angel or a demon. It surely did touch my soul. I hope it does the same to you. The book is titled The Lucifer Effect: How Can Good People Become Evil? Philip Zimbardo was a professor emeritus of psychology at Stanford University. He was also the principal investigator of the very well-known Stanford prison experiment, which I shall be describing in some time, and also an expert witness for the Abu Ghraib prison trial. So in this book, Zimbardo takes us on a journey. It's a fascinating yet unsettling journey into the dark side of human nature. He pulls back the curtain on the powerful, often invisible forces that shape our behavior and shows us how it is possible for ordinary people to become perpetrators of cruelty and violence. This is not just a story of evil dictators or infamous criminals. It's about any ordinary person who, when placed in the wrong situation, can be pushed to do extraordinary harm. So quite often we read accounts in newspapers and we see it online these days, and we are seen exclaiming to ourselves and others, how can someone be so cruel? Well, the book quite blatantly and bluntly shows us that we too are capable of the same evil. He starts off the book with discussing a key concept of humanization. So it's a very important process in the transformation of normal people into criminals. Dehumanization allows people to see others as less than human, making it very easy for them to harm them. So, for example, in the context of the Holocaust, Nazi propaganda depicted Jews as vermin, thus stripping them of their humanity. Once someone is dehumanized, they are no longer seen as deserving of human emotions, of empathy or compassion. It's like a mental cataract that clouds our moral judgment. The book challenges the popular notion that evil is something inherent in bad people. The book challenges the notion that bad people are bad apples. Zimbardo reveals that evil isn't simply about people being born with malicious intent. He challenges the concept that a criminal is born criminal, that there is some sort of a mutation in him that makes him a criminal. He says that evil is nothing but knowing better but doing worse. I'm going to repeat it here. Evil is knowing better but doing worse. And if that's the case, I'm pretty much sure that you must be thinking to yourself that, oh, then I've done evil too. Haven't we all been in situations where, for some reason or the other, we have known better but still did worse? It's about having the knowledge of right and wrong but choosing to do the wrong thing. And just imagine yourself in any one such situation, even an insignificant small one. What is your defense to that situation? I'm very certain that your defense to that situation is, the circumstances were that way, so I had to be that. And that is exactly what Zimbardo is trying to tell us, that it's the circumstances. It is the situational power and not the dispositional power that is making the person act the way he is acting. The line between good and evil is more permeable than we care to admit. As Zimbardo puts it, the barrel or the environment often corrupts the apple, the individual. And it's the powerful people who create these toxic barrels that shape our actions. The author dissects the role of systems of power. When power is linked with fear, whether through authority, ideologies, or even societal structures, it becomes an overwhelming force. This combination can compel people to abandon their moral compass. For example, when soldiers are in war zones and are given unchecked power and an us versus them mentality, it can lead to extreme acts of cruelty. We have seen them during the Abu Ghraib prison trial. We have also seen them during Vietnamese War. So even when the soldiers may have been decent individuals before the conflict, they are somehow, due to the situational power, compelled to act in that way. The book also dives into the psychology of anonymity, how the feeling of being anonymous or unaccountable can lead to antisocial behavior. It is like when we feel that no one is watching us or that we are just one faceless individual among many, we are far more likely to disregard social norms and ethical constraints. Example, riots, online trolling. People often behave in ways they would never in a more accountable and public setting. Another example of it is a stage show going on during your college festivals and people in the back, in the dark, hooting at the performer. You are just a voice without a name, without a face, and then that voice has the capability to be harsh, to be strong, to be persuasive. The most striking element of the book is how Zimbardo forces us to confront the fact that evil is not just the work of a few bad apples. It is the result of systems, of situations that can corrupt anyone. He uses the example of the 1963 Milgram experiments, where people were willing to administer what they thought were actually painful electric shocks to others, simply because an authority figure told them. The results were shocking. A vast majority of so-called normal, decent participants were willing to harm others when it was justified by an authority figure. It is a stark reminder of how power and authority can distort our sense of right and wrong. Zimbardo's message is ultimately a call to reflect on the forces that shape our decisions, individually as well as collectively. At the heart of this book is the Stanford Prison Experiment, conducted in 1971, led by psychologist and our author, Philip Zimbardo. It was aimed to explore the effects of social roles and authority on behavior. 24 college students were randomly assigned as either prisoners or guards in a mock prison setting. The study quickly spiraled out of control, with guards becoming abusive and prisoners showing signs of emotional distress. The experiment, initially said to last 2 weeks, was terminated after just 6 days. This was due to the severe psychological harm that had been caused to some of the prisoners. The study revealed the power of authority to influence behavior and highlighted the dangers of dehumanizing environments. However, it raised significant ethical concerns regarding the treatment of participants and the lack of intervention by researchers. Despite its flaws, the experiment remains a critical example in the study of social psychology and power dynamics. What I found fascinating in this experiment is one account where the prisoners were required to present their pleas before a parole board, a mock parole board. After having presented their pleas, these prisoners were given an option to be free. However, in doing so, they would be forfeiting the compensatory money they had received for participating in the experiment. All but one of the prisoners accepted the offer. And right after they said this, they went on to the prison cell and waited for the decision to arrive from the parole board. Now, what is interesting to think here is that they were not real prisoners. They didn't have to go back to the prison cells. Right in the meeting, in front of the parole board, at any point in time, they could have just said, I quit from the experiment and I forfeit the money. They believed they were prisoners. And hence they went back to the prison cells and waited for the decision to come from the parole board. And this only further consolidates the fact that the decision-making and rationality of a particular individual is at the mercy of the role that he's playing. Another important part of the book is the Abu Ghraib scandal, which has been described in quite a lot of detail. It refers to the 2004 discovery of widespread abuse of prisoners by US military personnel at the Abu Ghraib prison in Iraq. Photos surfaced showing detainees being tortured, sexually abused, and subjected to degrading treatment by soldiers. These actions, which violated international human rights law, sparked outrage worldwide. Several soldiers were court-martialed or given administrative punishment, but the trial raised questions about higher-level accountability. Critics argued that the abuse was not just the result of a few bad apples, but a systemic issue linked to military practices, interrogation policies, and a lack of oversight. The scandal remains a powerful reminder of the dangers of unchecked power and the need for accountability in military operations. And now we come to the crux of the book, something that has helped me deal with my problems. We discuss about cult dynamics. I have had a first-hand experience of being in a cult, and to come out of it has been the most harrowing process that I've yet had to endure. I read a lot of accounts of people in cults, of survivors, and seen a lot of documentaries. What I found in this book has by far been the most accurate, the most revealing, and the most therapeutic discussion on cult dynamics. It has helped me understand my role. It has helped me understand the other people around me who have been a part of this cult. And it has helped me empathize not only my choices, but the choices of others around me as well. To describe what is given in the book in short would not justify the beautiful way in which this particular topic has been put forth. The beauty here lies in how this author has presented something so delicate and sensitive in such a mature yet blunt way, in a way where we are able to understand and empathize our own actions and choices if we have ever been a part of such a group or a cult. So in chapter 12, investigating social dynamics, power, conformity, and obedience, Dr. Zimbardo has discussed about group dynamics and about mind control. The chapter opens with an extract from a book called The Inner Ring, written by C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis has said that I believe that in all men's lives, at certain periods, and in many men's lives at all periods, between infancy and extreme old age, one of the most dominant elements is the desire to be inside the local ring and the terror of being left outside. Of all the passions, the passion for the inner ring is most skillful in making a man who is not yet a very bad man do very bad things. Zimbardo says this is why evil is so pervasive. Its temptation is just a small turn away, a slight detour on the path of life, a blur in a side view mirror, leading to a disaster. He argues that the most dramatic instances of directed behavior change and mind control are not the consequence of exotic forms of influence such as hypnosis, psychotropic drugs, or brainwashing, but they are rather the systematic manipulation of the most mundane aspects of human nature over time in confined settings. C.S. Lewis has proposed that a powerful force in transforming human behavior, pushing people across the boundary between good and evil, comes from the basic desire to be in and not out. The author argues that the most dramatic instances of directed behavior change is the elusive camelot of acceptance into some special group, some privileged association that confers instant status and enhanced identity. Its lure for most of us is obvious. Who does not want to be a member of the in-group? Who does not want to know that he or she has been tried and found worthy of inclusion in a new rarefied realm of social acceptability? Peer pressure has been identified as one social force that makes people, especially adolescents, do strange things. They will do anything to be accepted. However, the quest for the inner ring is nurtured from within. It makes people willing to suffer through painful, humiliating initiation rites in fraternities, cults, social clubs, or the military. It justifies for many suffering a lifelong existence climbing the corporate ladder. This motivational force is doubly energized by what Lewis called the terror of being left outside. This fear of rejection when one wants acceptance can cripple initiative and can negate personal autonomy. It can turn social animals into shy introverts. The imagined threat of being cast into the outgroup can lead some people to do virtually anything to avoid their terrifying rejection. Authorities can command total obedience not through punishments or rewards, but by means of the double-edged weapon, the lure of acceptance, coupled with the fear of rejection. So strong is this human motive that even strangers are empowered when they promise us a special place at the table of shared secrets. Lewis goes on to describe the subtle process of initiation, the indoctrination of good people into a private inner ring that can have malevolent consequences, turning them into scoundrels. C.S. Lewis has described a passage at length, and I would like to read this passage word by word, and I would urge you to let it sink in. If you have ever been a part of a group, a fraternity, or a cult, this passage will describe the account to you that exact moment during which you are initiated into that particular group or cult, and how it is same for all of us, and how, in a way, you are actually helpless at that particular vulnerable, gullible moment. So here it goes. To 9 out of 10 of you, the choice which could lead to scoundrelism will come. When it does come though, it will not come in very dramatic colors. Obviously bad men, obviously threatening or bribing, will almost certainly not appear. It will happen over a drink or a cup of coffee, disguised as frivolity and sandwiched between two jokes, from the lips of a man or a woman, someone who you have recently been getting to know rather better and who you are hoping to know better still. Just at that moment, when you are most anxious and trying not to appear crude or naive, the hint will come. It will be the hint of something which is not quite in accordance with the technical rules of fair play. Something that the public, the ignorant, romantic public, would never understand, which even the outsiders in your own profession are apt to make a fuss about. But something, says your new friend, which we always do. It will not be by desire for gain or ease, but it will only be simply because at that moment, when the cup was so near your lips, you cannot bear to be thrust back again into the cold outer world. It would be so terrible to see the other man's face, that genial, confidential, delightfully sophisticated face, turn suddenly cold and contemptuous, to know that you had been tried for the inner ring and rejected. And then, if you are drawn in, Next week, it will be something a little further from the rules. And then next year, something further still, but all in the jolliest, friendliest spirit. It may end in a crash, a scandal, and penal servitude. It may end in millions, a peerage, and giving the prizes at your school. But you will be a scoundrel. In another account from the book titled 10 Lessons from the Milgram Studies, Creating Evil Traps for Good People, the author draws parallels to compliance strategies used by influence professionals in real-world settings, such as salespeople, cult, military recruiters, media advertisers, and others. These are 10 methods in which cult leaders initiate and maintain people in the cult. I have experienced all of them firsthand, and as I enlist them, I'm going to share with you my experiences with each of these. Number 1, prearranging some form of contractual obligation, verbal or written, to control the individual's behavior in pseudo-legal fashion. This cult that I was a part of was a religious cult. I had been initiated in the cult quite a long time after it had started. We were all told the same narrative, that we were all sinners, that we had committed grave sins against this religious leader in our past lives, and that this birth of ours was to be spent in trying to make up to him, in trying to repent for our sin. Number 2, giving participants meaningful roles to play that carry with them previously learned positive values and automatically activate response scripts. What was capitalized here in our case was our thirst for spirituality, was our need to have a strong parental figure in our life. Many of the people that I know in the cult were people who had been devoid of that parental authority in their life. I had lost my mother. A few others that I've known were orphaned too. They were trying to fill that void in their life. We were all told that we were children of this religious leader. Number 3, presenting basic rules to be followed that seem to make sense before their actual use, but then can be used arbitrarily and impersonally to justify mindless compliance. What we were told is that this particular person was our father, he was our guru, and in doing so, we were supposed to completely surrender to him. Surrender mentally, surrender our finances, and eventually surrender physically. That he was here to take care of us, and there was no one else on earth that we could look up to, but just him. Number 4, altering the semantics of the act, the actor, and the action. Replacing unpleasant reality with desirable rhetoric. Gilding the frame so that the real picture is disguised. So I feel most of you have already worked out what this is leading to. This eventually led to physical molestation of a lot of female members in that cult, who were all presented the rhetoric that it was being done to them to wipe out the sins of their past, that it was being done to them as a favor, they were being rewarded for their bhakti, and that they were going to experience immense enlightenment after having submitted themselves that way. Number 5, creating opportunities for the diffusion of responsibility or abdication of responsibility for negative outcomes so that others will be responsible, but not the person himself. In this case, we were told that whatever bad happened in our life was because of our past sins. It was our doing. However, any achievement, no matter how insignificant it was to be credited to this person, this guru, and not us. This led to a lot of self-hatred, self-judgment, and very, very low self-confidence. We lived in the belief that we were all sinners, that we all deserved the kind of treatment that we were getting. Number 6, starting the path toward the ultimate evil act with a small, seemingly insignificant first step. The easy foot in the door that swings open subsequent greater compliance pressures and eventually leads down a slippery slope. So it started with him keeping his hand on our head, touching our cheeks. It started with him blessing us that way. It started with him requesting, or rather ordering us to press his feet so that we could experience the energy that is flowing through him. And then that hand slipped. It slipped down. And it went on to places where it was not supposed to go. And all the while, even when it led to more horrific things, it just seemed that it had started with him just blessing us. Number 7,
having successively increasing steps on the pathway that are gradual so that they are hardly noticeably different from one's most prior action. It's not like he just simply took a girl and started doing all those things to her. It was so systematically, thoroughly, and meticulously done that even today, most of those women don't know what has happened to them. They're still under the impression that they underwent a spiritual experience, that they did it for God. Number 8, gradually changing the nature of the authority figure from initially just and reasonable to unjust and demanding, even irrational. This tactic elicits initial compliance and then later confusion, since we expect some form of consistency from authorities and trends. So if he started it out as a just act, naturally he would not be unjust later. Not acknowledging that this transformation has occurred leads to mindless obedience. The transformation of this group from a seemingly benign gathering, which was here to propagate kindness, love, compassion, sympathy, to a cult which propagated self-hatred, judgment, physical molestation, and torture, was so seamless that it still baffles me that was the former real or the latter. Number 9, making the exit costs high and making the process of exiting difficult by allowing verbal dissent. We had innumerable instances where we wanted to quit. Every time any person who ever even thought of quitting, who showed even a slightest change in his behavior, was given a warning, and the warning came in the form that if he was to leave, him or any of his family members would endure death or disease. And how was this convinced to that person? An example was taken of a person who had left in the past and who later on had died. Now, little did we all put our brains to the fact that out of the 100 people who left, very few had died, and that the statistics didn't really match. But the fear of death, disease, and losing a loved one is so real, is so palpable, that it really made us mindless slaves. Number 10, offering an ideology or a big lie to justify the use of any means to achieve the seemingly desirable essential goal. The ideology offered here was that we had gathered here to repent for our sins that we had committed against this leader in our past lives, that he was here to help us achieve salvation, and that any means that he used to help us in doing that were justified. Then they could be breaking our social ties, they could be driving a wedge in our marriages, physically molesting women, draining money, and achieving total, complete surrenderance. And I too am guilty of all of these. I have witnessed all these 10 methods.
This book was an eye-opener to our predicament. When I left the cult, I was still pretty much brainwashed. I was still reeling from the after effects of what had happened. I was still pretty much under the spell. The line between right and wrong had been blurred for me. I still didn't want to believe what I had witnessed. This book helped me cut the cord completely. It suddenly gave me the clarity I needed and the truth I deserved. It gave me a clear insight on the mind control that I was under. It helped me forgive myself for putting through this entire ordeal. And more importantly, it gave me the courage to speak up.